Hi and welcome back. In this video, we're going to turn our CSVs into JSON, just for us to understand a bit better how that works, and whether there's any benefits to using JSON instead of CSV. Often I find that JSON does give you a bit more flexibility and makes things a bit easier, just because it very easily translates into Python dictionaries, and also this just gives you a bit more exposure to how Python works. If you don't want to move this app over to JSON, feel free to just go into the next video and we're going to look at databases instead. First thing to do is to change our comment up here to say we are using JSON. Then I'm going to change the file to be books.json. And now we will begin using our interface here to create our files. Now, when we create a book table, we are wanting to make sure the file is there. And we're going to change this later on. We're going to get an error when we try to use this, but let's leave it like that just for now. Then let's first implement the getAllBooks function, because that's the easiest one. So I'm going to delete all of this except the context manager, and all that we have to return is json.load of the file. Of course, we'll have to import JSON at the top. Remember, the JSON file is going to be a list that does stuff and has maybe some books in here. There's like name is name, something like clean code. Author is going to be Robert, and red is going to be true. JSON can store true and false values, so feel free to store them directly in JSON, which simplifies things a little bit. So it's going to be a list of dictionaries, and that's cool. So when we get all the books, we do json.load, and that gives us a list. When we have our list, we can iterate over it, and we can do everything that we could with a normal list. Just pretend that it's this that we've put in a variable. So when we want to add a new book, how are we going to do that? Well, we need somehow to open up the JSON file and write a new dictionary to it. Now it's no longer as simple as appending something at the end, because we have to append something between this curly bracket and this square bracket, something like this. So it's not so easy. So what I'm going to do is do the same thing that we did with marking books as read and deleting them. I'm going to open all the books, read them all, append one using Python, and then save them all back. So books is going to be getAllBooks. Then we're going to do books, which remember is a list, so we can do append to it. And then we're going to append a dictionary using the parameters that we got here. And it's going to start off as false for the red status. Of course, at the end, we want to save all the books. And the books that we want to save are the books that we've modified already. Now, this save all books function is defined down here. So we're going to just cut it and move it down to save all books. But actually, apologies, getAllBooks is used first. So we are going to put it here. Oh. There. So we will put it there, and instead, of course, of doing all of this iteration, all we have to do in the save all books file function is json.dump books into file. And that's just going to save everything as a JSON string instead of as a CSV. So now we've implemented our add book, get all books, and save all books functions. We can go ahead and mark the book as read, but you may realize that we don't actually have to do anything except turn this one into a true, which is everything that we need to do. Similarly for the delete book, we're getting all the books, now they're coming from the JSON file, saving all the books, they're going to a JSON file, and in the middle, we're just modifying the list so that it doesn't include the book that matches the name. Again, we don't have to do anything here. Pretty nice, eh? Not a lot has changed, but the only thing that's changed is the false and 0 and 1. So if we go over to our app.py, we can go down here, and just remove this if book read equal 1, change it to if book read, since that already assumes is true. And that's it. We can then press play and, start adding books. And I said that earlier, this is going to raise an error. So I am going to enter a new book name. This is going to be Python 101 by Jose Salvatierra. This doesn't exist, by the way. Oh, we get the error. So this is the error I was talking about earlier, and it says json.decoder.json decode error. Expecting a value in line 1, column 1, character 0. Okay, so it was expecting a value. Let's see what the books.json file says. It's completely empty. Nothing there. Okay, so the error says it was expecting a value, and evidently it didn't find one. So why was it expecting a value? Well, here you can see the line that raised the JSON decode error. It's not something we wrote. It's inside this decoder.py file, and now we're getting lines that we didn't write because, of course, we're using a module that we didn't write, and this is the module that raised the error. That error then appeared in this raw decode function, so that's the next thing we get. That was called from this decode function, which was here, and then here, and eventually we reach our code. Return json.load file. And that was inside the getAllBooks file function. So let's go over there, and let's make this a bit smaller. And it's saying that the error was returned here. Return json.load. Why do you think there may be an error in this line? I'm not sure what you came up with, but the problem here is that our books.json file is empty, and that's not valid JSON. Remember I said that some programs would expect your JSON file to have an object around it? Some will allow a list to be in it, and Python's JSON module is one of these that allow the list, and that's totally valid JSON. There's a few more things that it can be, but it certainly cannot be empty, for that is not valid JSON. So what we have to do is make sure that in the createBook table, we are initializing it to some value. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that the initial value has to be an empty list. And then we'll need the variable up here as well, of course. Now, as soon as we create the book table, it's going to initialize the list's value to be the file's value to be an empty list. And then when we go over to add a book and we get all the books, what it's going to do is it's going to read that empty list. And then it's going to append to it. And then it's going to save it back. Now that we'll have some valid JSON in there, let's run this again. And you can see that it works. And this book, by the way, 30 Days of Python, is coming soon. So if you do know somebody that is interested in 30 Days of Python, let me know. So now we've got our two books here. And as you can see, we've not read them. Not read them doesn't exist yet, of course. But then we can mark one as read. And listing them again now shows that one of them is not read and the other one is read. Looking into books.json, we can see that the JSON stored here represents what we're seeing there. Two objects, Python 101 by me, read is false, and another object, 30 Days of Python by me, and read is true. Notice how when you call your file .json in PyCharm, it starts giving you some nice syntax highlighting. So that's pretty nice too. And also notice how the false with a capital F went down to a lowercase f, and the true with a capital T went down to a lowercase t. That's because these are the JavaScript equivalents of Python's true and false with capital letters. In JavaScript, they have lowercase letters. JSON means JavaScript object notation, so of course it's going to go down to lowercase as well. That's it. We can delete books. We can delete Python 101 since that one's not happening. List them again. That's now like that. And of course, we can quit and that exits. So that's how you would turn our program from CSVs over to JSON. And all we've had to do is modify a couple of functions to tell our code now to talk to a JSON instead of saving things manually as strings into the file. Pretty straightforward, and our app.py hasn't had to change basically at all, other than this if there. So that's it for this video. Hope you learned something, and I'll see you on the next one.